Yo, what up guys, it's ARTFX and you're watching a new video. Today we're gonna have a look at Soundtoys 5. Let's get to it. So I have an Ableton project open right here. You have already heard this project, but I haven't really worked on it ever since then. I thought this would be a good project to demonstrate what the Soundtoys 5 plugin bundle actually is. So the bundle comes with a total of 18 plugins and an additional effect rack. That effect rack is really powerful because you can actually load all of these 18 plugins into the effect rack and you can set up your own chains of effects and save them. It's really powerful. So I have this particular project right here. I put some instances of Soundtoys plugins on each of these tracks to kind of like give the tracks a little bit more of a different feeling. I'm first going to play you the track as it is with all the Soundtoys plugins on it. After that, I'm gonna turn off all the Soundtoys plugins and I'm gonna play you it another time, but this time without the Soundtoys plugins, so that you can hear the difference. Then we're actually gonna look into each individual track and see what I've done with the plugins and see what you can do with it. So let's get to it. I'm gonna play this in 3, 2, 1.
Emotions going around, sweet release. I'm high, my soul is bound, sweet release. My love is this very sound, and I'm like I should be. Sweet release, my vision's all in a cloud. Sweet release, I'm never coming down. Sweet release, and I am taking a vow to be like I should be. Yeah, there's a spark inside, that light box that won't go away. There's a spark inside, that light box that won't ever fade. I think you know what I'm about. There's a spark inside.
So now I'm gonna play you the other version of the project without all of the Soundtoys plugins on it. Let's get to it. 3, 2, 1.
Emotions going around, sweet release. I'm high, my soul is bound, sweet release. My love is this very sound, and I'm like I should be. Sweet release, my vision's all in a cloud. Sweet release, I'm never coming down. Sweet release, and I am taking a vow to be like I should be. Yeah, there's a spark inside, that light box that won't go away. There's a spark inside, that light box that won't ever fade. I think you know what I'm about. There's a spark inside.
So there you have it. You could possibly hear that the second one sounded a little bit more empty, and especially at the start of the project, at the start of the track, it sounded completely different. Let's get to it. I'm gonna show you what I've done to each one of these tracks with the Soundtoys 5 plugins. So let us start from the top and just work our way down. the top track is my vocal. So this is actually a vocal that I took from a sample pack.
Yes, my love is this very sound, and I'm like I should be.
There's already a little bit of processing on there, but I decided to add a nice little effect rack. So this is the effect rack. You can see right here at the right hand side you have all the different Soundtoys plugins, and you can load them in the effect rack right here. This particular preset, I just took a preset from the library. There's a whole variety of presets, so many of them, so that's definitely a good thing. I took the one high and bitey under the vocal section, and what this is actually gonna do, it gives the vocals a little bit more of an echo. So this is the Echo Boy. The Echo Boy is a really powerful delay. It has so many different features, and first of all, I'm gonna get into all of these plugins one by one in future videos. I'm gonna go through them, through every single one of them, just describe what all the settings are and what they do. But for now, we're just gonna look at what these plugins can do. So the Echo Boy is kind of like an analog delay. So it sounds like an analog delay. It's kind of like simulating what analog delays would do. Now, if we listen to the vocal without, you would hear that there is already a little bit of reverb and delay on here, which are coming from the Synth tracks, but
Please, my vision's all in a cloud. Sweet release, I'm never coming down.
but it still sounds quite dry. So I decided to add this effect rack, and that actually turns it into this.
Emotions going around. Sweet release, I'm high, my soul is bound. Sweet release, my love is this very sound, and I'm like I should be.
So that gives the vocal a lot more interest. It just makes the vocal so much more interesting than without it. I feel like vocals usually, especially in the tracks that I make, I really add a lot of delay, because delays really, it sort of fills out all of the stuff in the background. You know, it makes your track sound fuller, it makes the vocal sound more interesting. So yeah, this plugin, Echo Boy, actually comes with so many different types of delays that you could set up. It's literally so versatile. I mean, right off the bat, it doesn't really look that complicated. I mean, there are some things in here that you might think of, what does it mean? But I mean, if we go in here, you can see we can actually open up this thing and really dive under the hood and really change all the settings. So that is why I think the Soundtoys plugins are really powerful. They give you so much more control than, for instance, the Ableton Live delays or just your regular delay plugins. So that's basically all I did to the vocal. I just added that little bit of delay kind of stuff, and I think it sounds really nice. But if we go to the next track, so this is the drums. Now for the drums, I did something to this particular drum loop. If you listen to this loop, let's take a listen to this loop. It's actually just a house loop that's speed up, and I took the effect rack. Now this one does a lot more than the previous one. As you can see, we have a crystallizer, which is kind of like a delay as well, but it's like a granular delay, so that's really interesting. We've got two filter freaks right here. Filter Freak is actually a really interesting filter plugin. It has really resonant filter shapes, so that's really powerful. I use these a lot in combination with distortion, because I think the resonances of these filters, they really, you know, they kind of change the way the distortion acts when you put the distortion after it. So that's really interesting. You get so many crazy effects from that. Then we've got a tremolator and we've got an Echo Boy, but I turned the Echo Boy off because it was making it a little bit too much. So if I play this without the Soundtoys 5 plugins, it sounds just like this. And if I turn it on, it actually sounds like this. So you can hear that weird effect going on. Now, what I would do, because this is a delay that's causing that effect, what I would do is I would actually sample this and chop off the last section, because if you listen to the end right here, where pretty much the loop stops, you just get that little bit of delay tail. I would actually flatten this and just chop that out so that you just get absolute silence right at that point. But for demonstration purpose, I didn't really bother too much with that. So with just that, I mean, we already made this drum a little bit more interesting. It sounded like this, and we turn it into this. It just gives it a little bit more of a bouncing kind of rhythm, which I think is really good for drum and bass. Now, I also have this particular percussion loop. And on this one, I decided to play around with Filter Freak 2. I took the Drum Pumper 1 preset, and I think I just played around a little bit with the settings just to make it a little bit more to what I want. Without it, it just sounds like a normal standard drum and bass break. Now, if I add Filter Freak 2, you can hear it kind of like adds that, well, weird noisy kind of thing in the background. That is actually really interesting because it now adds that stuff in the background, and we made this drum loop already a lot more interesting. So that sounds much more interesting, right? So I also made this audio effect rack right here, which has an effect rack in it. And this effect rack is just there to give the drums a little bit more distortion and a little bit more saturation so that they punch through the mix when everything is playing at the same time. So the drums by itself, they're already pretty powerful, but I wanted to add a little bit more distortion. So listen when I turn this on. I'm gonna play you this without the distortion first, and then I'm gonna turn it on so that you can clearly hear the difference. So you can hear the drums just become a little bit louder, but the overall loudness is not really increasing that much. It's just that the drums are getting distorted, and therefore we get more harmonics in the sound, and thus the perceived loudness becomes louder, but the actual loudness is not really going to increase that much, and that is really, really helpful. If you're making tracks and you're struggling with your drums to let them cut through your mix, of course, sidechain compression and stuff like that will help, but I think just adding a little bit of saturation to your drums to kind of like fill out the frequencies a little bit more will help a lot as well. You don't always need sidechain compression to make your drums work well in your mix. Now, that's pretty it for all the drum stuff. Let's go to the next track. Now, this is a loop which I took from a sample pack. It's a Vengeance loop. All of you who watched my earlier video about how to use parts of tracks or parts of sample packs and turn them into a full track, you heard this loop before. This is actually the same project. Now, if you listen to the intro, you can hear I'm doing some really interesting stuff with this one. I'm gonna turn this effect rack on and just listen to what happens when we play this back. It starts off really interesting. So what I'm doing right here, let me bring up the automation lanes. You can see I'm automating two particular parameters. What I'm automating is, as you can see, I've created a rack, and in this rack are 3 chains. So the first 2 chains have an effect rack in it from the Soundtoys 5 bundle. The third chain is completely dry. So during the first part, the first half of this, you only hear the second chain. Then right here the first chain comes in as well, and then right here the third dry chain, which is not affected by any plugin whatsoever, is actually going to be activated as well. So during the main part of the track, you're actually hearing 3 chains of effects on this particular sound. But what am I doing with these? Let me just have a look in it. The first thing you hear is this particular effects chain. So you can see we're doing quite a bunch with this. I have a radiator and I have a filter freak. Now the radiator is kind of like a saturation plugin. It's a little bit like it's modeled after an analog preamp, a tube preamp. So you would find that a lot on Analog Gear and Analog Studios. But it's really crazy to have stuff like that in your DAW, which is just going to make it so much easier to add a little bit more grit to sounds. And then again, we have a really interesting filter freak again, which is doing this crazy stuff right here. Now, if I turn these off, let's just listen to what they do. So that's dry. Then the radiator. It's adding a little bit more saturation. It makes the overall volume just a little bit louder. Then the filter freak is basically doing the crazy stuff. That's what we had. So that's actually doing a really crazy thing. It's giving it this really interesting stereo kind of feeling. I'm using the preset called Band Flipper. That's actually pretty cool. You can actually still access the presets from each single one of these devices just by clicking on this settings knob. That will actually bring up the preset browser, and you also have a preset browser for the entire rack. So there's so many presets coming with this, it's really crazy. Then during the second part, I'm bringing up the first chain. Now the first chain is actually high passed, but in here I'm using a couple of different effects again. I'm using the Phase Mistress, then we have a filter freak, and that's basically it. Now you can see the filter freak is really crazy. If we open up this tweak menu right here, you get so many different options, and I'm gonna get into that in future videos. Pretty much a lot of these plugins have that particular feature. You can see the same thing here on the Phase Mistress. Now, what are these two plugins doing? Let me just let me solo this chain so that we can hear just what this chain is doing. So that's the dry version, just a little high pass filter on there. Now the Phase Mistress, in my opinion, is a really great effect. I actually, when I first played around with this, I immediately recognized this effect from quite a bunch of productions. But it's such a good effect. Now it's basically a phase shifter, so it kind of like sounds like a phaser, but you get so much control over it. I prefer this one over the Ableton Live Phaser any single day. This is what it does. So this is without. This is with. So that's pretty cool. It sounds like a phaser, but I tried getting the same results with the Ableton Live Phaser, but I couldn't even get near. So yeah, I really love the sound of this. Now, the next thing I did, let me see, we have the filter freak. And it's basically just doing this. But I brought the mix down. And then at the main part of the track, this third chain comes in, which is just completely dry. Sounds just exactly the same as no effects on it. So all three together now actually turned this into this. So that just made it sound, well, a lot more interesting. There's a lot more going on, and it just sounds much more, well, yeah, interesting compared to just a piano loop. I mean, The piano loop by itself, it's fine, but I think doing stuff like this is gonna make your track so much more original, and it's kind of like gonna separate your track from a lot of the other producers out there who are just using regular pianos and using just presets and stuff like that. I think when you really dive into these effects and really start learning about them and how they work, you can make your sound so much better. So yeah, I really think I really can see me using this bundle on so many plugins, on so many tracks, I have to say. Then we have the piano. Now the piano, dry. Sounds like a really good piano, it sounds absolutely amazing. But on this one, I kind of like wanted to do the same thing as I did on the other loop. So I took some different effects and I put them into a rack, and I kind of like played around with them. So the first thing you hear, let me bring up the automation lanes. You can see I'm again automating two separate parameters. The first thing you hear is just this first chain. So that turned this piano loop from this particular sound into this. Then right here, the second part of the intro, the second chain comes in, and what this is gonna do, it's gonna turn this loop into this. So when we combine those two, we actually get this. That already sounds a lot more interesting. Then during this part, where actually the main drop part of the track comes in, I brought in this third dry chain again, which is just the dry piano. Just to kind of like give it some more weight, and because of these two effects, we're really losing a lot of that original piano. I mean, doesn't really sound like a piano anymore, but when we add that piano in, just makes it sound a lot more like a real piano again. Just a piano with some interesting kind of stuff going on on top. So yeah, it's great to spice up effects like that. So in my opinion, that just already sounds better than what it was before. Then we have the sub. There's nothing going on the sub, so we can leave that the way it is. So then we go to the effects group. Let me just play it without first. So you can hear that crash. It goes down pretty quickly, and it stops pretty quickly as well. So I kind of like wanted to extend the tail of that particular crash and of the other sweeps as well. So I added an effect rack again. And in here you can see I'm using a filter freak, and I'm using an echo boy and a phase mistress. So that turned this into we now have a slightly longer tail, which is just what I wanted. It's not too big of a change. Just makes it sound a little bit more different when we have the sweeps. It just extends those sounds. Now, I think that's about it. We have one more track to talk about. This is a synth loop that is pretty much only playing during the main part of the track. It's a really standard synth, and I really wanted to spice this up because in my opinion it just sounds a little bit too simple. So I took an effect rack again. This time I took the preset Scooby-Doo phaser, and I have to say this sounds really cool. I took a phase mistress, and I also took a primal tap, which is in my opinion a really interesting delay. We're gonna look into this, but this multiply knob is, I don't know, it just it does some really weird things. It's a really distinctive sound, and if you hear it, you've probably already heard it in some tracks before, but I'm really happy that I have this right now because I'm probably gonna use this in a couple of my tracks. So, what I'm doing with this, I have the phase mistress, so that's kind of like a phaser that gives it this phasing kind of sound, and a primal tap is a delay. So without any of this, we just get that dry kind of loop, and with it, so that phase mistress really gives it a cool sound. Without that, it just sounds really static, right? And that phase mistress is actually gonna change the sound over time. So it's just shifting the phases of the sound over the time of 2 bars, because that's how I set it up. Right here you can see 2 bars rhythm with a sine shape. So if we just play this back now, it's gonna take 2 bars for that sine wave to fully go over one particular cycle of the LFO shape, and that is connected to this frequency knob, so it's just moving back and forth, and that is giving it, well, a really cool sound. So that's pretty much everything I did to this project. I really love this plugin bundle. I have to say Soundtoys 5 is immediately, it turned into one of my favorite plugin bundles that I own. I'm gonna be using this on my upcoming EP a lot. I have been working on some of the tracks for that EP, and I have to say, during the mixing I absolutely love using these plugins, but also during the sound design phases. Stuff like the Echo Boy, Filter Freak, let's say the phase mistress, of course, as well. There's just some really cool stuff in here that you can use during sound design sessions. Just run sounds through it and really start stacking up different effects from this bundle, and you will see that you can, well, turn your sounds around completely. There is some really cool plugins in this bundle. There's too much to talk about in just one video, so we're gonna do a bunch of more videos where I'm actually gonna look at every single one of these. But for now, I think this will do. If you like this video and if you want to have a couple of sample or preset packs like the sounds that you hear in my videos, go to my website. I have just released a new preset pack for Serum. Just click the annotation in the screen right now. That'll take you to the product page of my newest product. It's called Cinematic Creations for Serum. It's a preset pack for Serum which contains a whole bunch of interesting evolving bat sounds, really horrifying lead sounds that would really sound great in a horror movie. Basically the entire pack is inspired by modern day movie and film and game soundtracks, and it just gives you a bunch of those sounds. So it comes with a whole bunch of custom wavetables, custom presets, and custom noise files. So if you want to have that, check it out on my website right now, and I hope to see you back soon. Peace!